Yo, what's going on, young goats? It's your boy 3, representing TKOG. Today I'm going to talk about some crazy tech cards that you guys can actually implement in your strategy in the new format. This is specifically more in regards to Riseo than it is in regards to Malice. These are the two decks that are going to be introducing themselves as decks to beat, and they are going to take a lot of the forefront of people's attention, and a lot of people might be panicking. Now, Riseo, I feel like it's getting that, you know what I'm saying, it's getting that senpai treatment. What's like, dang, that look easy. It cheap though, that look easy. Let me play that deck. That's how people treating it, bro. I'm telling you right now, bro. A majority of people that are flocking the Riseo at first impression are just seeing, dang, that looks like it's not that hard to play and it's a really good deck. That's what they said about Tenpai. You know what I'm saying? There are a couple of intricacies that kind of are more favorable for certain decks. So I just want to say, as a Memento player, I'm so grateful for Riseo and Malice coming into the format and phasing Shifter out of a lot of people's main decks. I want to say I'm so grateful for my game ones being more secure than they've ever been for, like, ever. Because ever since I've been playing Memento, Shifter's been in the format. So I'm grateful for that. So just the fact that these decks exist, it makes me as a Memento player happy. It should make you as a Fire player happy. Like if you're playing Fire King and you were struggling with Shifter, the fact that your game ones feel more secure and you can prepare more adequately for Shifter post signing is incredible. So that's just an overlapping factor. And the fact that Riseo and Malice are the decks to beat, people are going to be playing some wonky tech cards that may or may not be good against your deck if you're not playing those. And those are just some overlapping factors. I feel like if those decks, I tip my hat off to those two new decks because they really make my job easier for what I'm trying to do. We're going to talk about some tech cards that help you, specifically that are not really like hand traps, but I got a couple hand traps because I did want to talk about some of the best hand traps that I feel like you should have paired up against those matchups. But more specifically, we want to talk about tech cards in this video. So we're just going to get right into it. If you guys like the content, subscribe! What happened? Whoa, that was great. I said subscribe. I just need to see broken screens. Broken screens. Stop holding me back. Stop holding me back. Don't cover my mouth when I scream. Broken screens. Broken screens. Subscribe. Bro, stop doing that. Dang. So yeah, you guys, let's talk about this. So first and foremost, Riseo's inboard typically will be setting up with a plugin and a cross, and if they have access to hold thruster, it'll be either they actually have it face down for more pops, or they're gonna be actually attaching it through the plugin, which enables them to have an extension on your turn to XYZ into whatever they need. Most of the time it's going to be Baguska, which is kind of crazy that they can XYZ on your turn after popping a million cards. One of the things about Riseo that you should understand is the deck is way too resilient against hand traps for you to think that your hand traps are going to prevent them from ending on Dead Natter. One of the things that you're always going to have to do, no matter how many times you hand trap them, unfortunately, is going to be a Dead Natter. They have the inherent summons. I mean, it's pretty much Sprite 2.0. There's no way that you can really stop the bodies from hitting the field in a cohesive manner that like will allow you to also be able to play. Like, I think the only deck that could stop them from making Dead Natter turn 0 is going to be Labyrinth being able to set up a D barrier. So everybody else that ain't playing Lab, they're going to be looking at a Dead Natter no matter how many hand traps they throw at you. And so what we want to look at is objectively, is this a hand trap format on the premise that I need hand traps to make sure that my opponent doesn't end on their full board? I want to say that Riseo's board most of the time looks like Dead Natter with a dual drive that resolved, which means crosses up, and plug-in or hold thruster, or all of them. Most of the time, plug-in is going to be attaching hold thruster from the deck, which is pretty gnarly, and that's going to be setting up some XYZ summon plays on the opponent's turn. That is one of their ways that they can play around the fact that you can out their Dead Natter, the fact that they can make another Dead Natter, which is pretty crazy. So things that really do help in that matchup are going to be specific board breakers, because since you know that the board is just always going to be there, they're always going to end on Dead Natter no matter what. You want to look at cards that help you to deal with that card with ease, and we're going to be talking about cards like Thrust. For Thrust, it's different for cards like Thrust and Talons. I want to say objectively that Mind Control and like cards like Change of Heart are going to be better taking the Dead Natter outright, so that you don't even have to play into him and lose any value. but Thrust and Talents also have nuances that these cards don't have, being able to check different boxes. For example, I feel like Thrust is really good in this format because everybody and their mom wants to play hand traps, and it's not even like people are playing hand traps because, oh my gosh, U-belt. Nah, bro, it's not even like that. At this point, I just feel like it's a blanket. It's a safety net, bro. I understand the premise of I don't want my opponent to full combo and make a board that I can't break. I need hand traps. They're necessary evil. But when it comes to like specifically looking at the Riseo matchup, no amount of hand traps is stopping them from ending on the board. What you're trying to do is obviously just prevent them most of the time from resolving dual drive and getting access to cross. That card's just nutty. It lets you grind. It's a monster negate. It's too much. It's too much. And so, because everybody and their mom's playing hand trap, cards like Talents and Thrust are insane. So we're going to talk about the overlapping value of these cards, because yes, you can just Talents to take the Dead Natter. Yes, you could Thrust for Mind Control or Change of Heart and take the Dead Natter. That's pretty bonkers. You know, that's pretty crazy to me, if you ask me. That's pretty insane, because taking the Dead Natter does multiple things. Yes, they can make another Dead Natter through the whole thruster if they actually play it correctly, but you have a Dead Natter now to check the rest of their board. Dead Natter that you take will be able to contest a lot of their board. It checks the face down imperms. It's actually going to be able to dodge targeting effect. Oh my god, it's just crazy, bro. It's just absolutely insane, bro. Most of the time when you activate like those cards, what they will do is pop their own Dead Natter. And that's the other thing that you have to pay attention to, is you're not always going to keep their Dead Natter. But I will say, because Talents doesn't target, and if they do commit to the whole thruster line, they should have a second way to make the Dead Natter. So what the Talents essentially will be doing is forcing them to out their first Dead Natter for them to commit into the second one. So it's not like always the best, but the game plan objectively is to keep them off of Dead Natter. That's the best card that they have to interact with you. And if you hand trap them correctly, then Dual Drive should not have resolved. That means plugin will not be attaching the whole thrust, and that means they will be not able to make another Dead Natter on your turn, which means Talents just says buy Dead Natter most of the time, as well as Change of Heart and Mind Control. Thrust is better because you can set cards like D-Barrier. You know that they're going to be hand trapping you, so like whether you're main decking this, like if you're maining Thrust, you should be maining like these two 1-ofs because of Malice, and this is good against Malice, the fire decks. It's really good against like all of the link decks, bro. It's pretty okay against Murmo. It's really not the best. I wouldn't recommend it. But it is very good against Malice. It's very good against Fire King. It's very good against Snake Eye. It's this card is actually insane against Tempai, and you know they're going to be hand trapping you. And that's where Thrust is better. Talents, we can talk a little bit about this card. The reason why Talents, I think, is actually really broken in this format is not only just because of interacting with the Riseo board. It's so much easier to break that board with a card like Talents. It's also the simple fact that you know that they're playing more hand traps than Engine. Most of the time, their hand's going to have more hand traps than Engine. Riseo doesn't have enough starters to play more Engine than hand trap. They have more hand traps than Engine in their entire deck. Like, I want to say 57% of their deck is hand traps. And so with the card like Talents, if you get hand trapped once and they turn Talents on, what you want to do with Talents this format most of the time is just take Engine, and you don't really need to worry about the hand traps. Especially if you yourself are on Riseo and you're ending on Dead Natter no matter what, you're just going to take their Engine, because the premise of hand traps is to make sure that your opponent can't play. And so why would you take their hand traps and try to combo through the next two that they have when your inboard is all your inboard's supposed to do is prevent them from playing? So if you're trying to prevent them from playing, the best way you could do this is actually just to take their Engine and let them keep their little stanky hand traps, those little dookie stains, bro. We don't care about that. So Talents is pretty crazy for that reason, and being able to thrust in a D-Barrier to punish them for hitting you with a couple hand traps is also crazy. So these four cards, I think, are probably some of the best tech cards you can play this format. Droplet and Chalice have a very similar application. Just being able to out cards like Dead Natter is pretty nice. Don't forget that, again, if you didn't hand trap them correctly and Dual Drive did resolve, there is a chance that they can make another Dead Natter, and you have to be careful of that. But Droplet and Chalice do contest Dead Natter with ease. So these cards just need no really true explanation. There's some nuance, and obviously there's overlapping factors that these cards are all good. Like, these 6 cards are specifically so much better than the rest of the cards I'm going to talk about because they're good in every matchup. No matter what deck you're playing against, these cards are always going to be good. And especially with decks that are ending on like 1 Omni Negate, I mean, dude, these cards are crazy good. And then the next thing that we want to talk about is Bystials. I know that Malice likes to play Bystials, and it's a good thing because it gives them like an edge in the Riseo matchup. The best Bystial, in my opinion, in the Riseo matchup is definitely going to be Druisworm. Druisworm outs Dead Natter by itself. I mean, literally just normal summon anything. You don't even have to activate the effect and then link off into whatever you want. A moon, whatever you want, bro. I don't care. Just link it off, and Druisworm will just send the Dead Natter outright. You also are able to banish the aggregator so that they don't have that pseudo Omni Negate playing into your turn. Because that's one of the things that you have to be wary of with Dead Natter, is that the fact that you can chalice it and it can still detach aggregator for cost to negate one of your cards. But Druisworm completely contests the entirety of the Dead Natter interactions. In a nutshell, it's a really crazy card. Magnuma is a little bit better than Druisworm because you can hit multiple things. These cards also hit their grind game. Cross cannot take from Banish Zone and put back. So there's that. The fact that these cards can choke the grind game that Riseo has. Riseo's grind game is really riding off of Cross. Like, follow-up is not the same thing as being able to grind, in a sense that a grind game to me is reoccurring resources, being able to like recycle your extra deck, recycle your main deck, put cards back so that you can keep resolving effects. Adding an ice for follow-up is not like grinding, you know what I mean? So this deck's grind game comes purely off of Cross. So these are some of the best hand traps. Objectively, these, if you are thinking on the standpoint of like a hand trap that gets better value out of any other hand trap, Bystials are also just flat out bodies. So yes, I think they're very good into the Riseo matchup. Mocharmy Purulia is the best Mocharmy in the Riseo matchup. It's very, very strong. I don't think that Mocharmy Purulia is main deck worthy because it doesn't really have enough overlapping into the other matchups. It can be okay against Memento. It can be really good against Fire King, and it can be okay against Malice. Fuwalos is a lot better against Malice if you ask me. But I will say that this card, a lot of times, will force Riseo to just literally pass on a Dead Natter if they commit into this at all. Sometimes they'll have 4 hand traps in their hand and they'll be like, nah, bro, you don't need no draws today. And then we have Droll. Not only is Droll like just a hand trap that works against other hand traps because it turns off Molcharmies, which is very important for Malice being able to play into Fuwalos because of the fact that Malice does not need to add a lot of the times. Malice is really good for multiple reasons. Like, it doesn't really care about Ash and Droll. It doesn't really care about Shifter. It doesn't really care about like a lot of different hand traps. It can be hurt by like Ogre, Mourner, Veiler, Imperm. You know, Ash is the fact that that deck has abilities to play around Ash so well and so frequently. And as long as you're like playing your engine correctly, Malice will be beating a lot of those low impact hand traps, and it has clean lines into Nib. But Droll is here because most of this video is talking about Riseo. Droll's very, very good against Riseo. These 4 hand traps are like very, very good. Like, no matter what, yeah, sure, they can end on Dead Natter, but the thing is, on their way to dual drive, they search like at least once, bro. Literally at least once, and that turns Droll on, which means you don't have to hand trap dual drive anymore. You actually get to save your hand traps for another card. So if you had like Droll Imperm, and you Drolled them and they couldn't make dual drive, you could just Imperm the Dead Natter on your turn, and you can feel confident that they don't have plug-in into Hold Thruster or anything like that. So Droll's actually very, very, very good against the Riseo matchup. And I'm talking about hand traps where you don't draw them in conjunction with others. So these are just standalone hand traps that are good by themselves, that if you drew no other hand trap and these are the only ones in your hand, you're blessed, brother. Is this good against Riseo? Is this good against Malice? No. I think that, again, the overlapping nuances is that cards that are good against Riseo are not always going to be good against Malice, but I think that cards that are good against Malice are going to be very good against a lot of other decks too, like Fire Kings, Snake Eyes, and Mementos. I don't know how popular those decks are going to be. I think a lot of people are going to be on the big two. Nibiru is another standalone card that even just this card by itself, yes, Riseo can play around Nib extremely effectively. They don't have to play into it. And there is the offset chance that they do get to set up the cross for Nib, but you really have to think about the math that on their 3rd summon, they're getting Dual Drive. And if Dual Drive didn't attach, then they're really in trouble, and that's the problem. And that's where cards like Bystials can help you a lot, because if your Bystial is hitting the target that Dual Drive would attach, because Dual Drive would then have a material for cross to negate the Nib on the summon of Dead Natter, that's where this card in conjunction is even more bonkers. But Nib by itself, it's still very, very, very impactful. It's a very strong card, and you have to respect it. And the fact that Riseo lists are playing this as a cross-out target means that Nib is being respected, which means that it does have impact in the format. It's also pretty solid against Malice as well. Malice has some pretty clean lines into Nib, but what Nib does, and that's what I've always enjoyed about the card, is it's not about its turn ending viability. It's not about the fact that Nib can end turns. It's about the fact that it will force them to end on half boards if you use it correctly. And that's what Nib does for me. If I'm like taking a Caesar out of the equation, a Desiree out of the equation, if I'm taking 2-3 interruptions that would have ate 3 cards out of my hand for lunch, then I'm loving Nib for that. Lancia is also literally up there. This is the one hand trap that you can draw against Malice and feel very good. Because even into Fualos, they have some kind of clean lines. Like, it's not the worst. Like, they have so many layers. And the ability to finish playing their board on your turn as well. So Lancia is crazy. And what we're going to talk about with Lancia is also a card like Artifact Dagda. Not every deck can pull this off. But there are some crazy decks right now that can set up Dagda and pop the Lancia on the opponent's turn. And that will literally FTK Malice. So I feel like not a lot of people are talking about this, but I wanted to point this out in this video, that any deck that has the ability to pop Lancia on the opponent's turn should be teching in Dagda, whether they're siding it or maining it. It is very, very good. Lancia is literally a format warping card when it's good. Every time Lancia is good, it's just like, it's better than Shifter a lot of the time. It's just not okay. It's literally not okay. And it is better than Shifter in the aspect that, like, it's the only kind of, like, other turn-ending card besides, like, Droll. Like, there you have Droll, Molcharmies, Lingering. But, like, Lancia is, like, the opposite of Shifter, except the fact that you can use every hand trap under Lancia, pretty much, for the most part. I mean, sure, Bystials, whatever. But if you're Lancia and them, you don't want to Bystial them, right? They want to banish their cards. And then another cool tech card that we can talk about is Lava Golem. I brought up Lava Golem because there's quite a few decks that actually don't need their normal summon that can really take advantage of this. Just hitting the Duo Drive and literally hitting the Detonator cuts off so much layers. And, like, you don't even get to attach, like, Hold Thrust and put it in Grave and do your XYZ shenanigans. This can be very, very good against Malice as well. I just wanted to point out that Lava Golem's kind of the GOAT right now. Is Lava GOAT, bro. The other cards that I wanted to talk about are more specifically in respect to Riseo. These are cards that I'm actually taking in my Memento deck because I play Memento Goblin Bikers. So fortunately for me, my cards have higher value, and my clunky like hands where I would have like a Doug plus a normal summon, now Doug is gas in the Riseo matchup. These cards are not the best because the premise of them is that your opponent already got to end on something, but we've already pretty much checked the box to, like, Riseo is always going to end on Detonator no matter what, so you're just always going to have to contest that card. What I like about cards like Doug and Grand Interest in the Goblin Biker archetype specifically is they detach a material from the... I mean, they're going to detach a material regardless, whether they're getting hit by Cross, which is kind of crazy if they cross them, but they're always going to detach a material from Detonator. So if you're like going Doug, detach from Detonator, summon, effect to search, they're probably going to pop this. So he's going to eat 2 materials off of Detonator and turn on a card like Talents with ease. The fact that Grand Entrance can detach a material from Detonator to search a Doug, and then detach a material from Detonator to summon the Doug, this card, like, literally outs Detonator by itself in the right context. This card's actually really high key, like, super broken. I know that everybody can't play the Goblin Biker cards, and I'm not saying, this video isn't to say, oh, play Goblin Biker, it's the truth, it's the way, it's the answer to Riseo, because the deck's not strong enough by itself to justify its Riseo matchup, but it is a very good Riseo matchup, if I do say so myself. So these cards are pretty nasty. Big Gabunga be going crazy, bro. And then we have XYZ Encore, because we already covered these via Thrust. These are important. And lastly, XYZ Encore. Do I think this card should be played? I'd rather play these cards because the nuances of these cards, like, again, have overlapping factors into other matchups. Do I think that Riseo is so broken that I should play a card that's specifically predicated to only that matchup? I don't really think so, but if you have a very good balanced matchup and you were never scared of fire and you were never folding Tempai in the first place, and Riseo is like the deck you struggle with the most, then you might have to make that concession. I would say it's too early to say, oh, Riseo is the only deck you need to worry about. But that's pretty much all I have for you guys in this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. God bless you guys. Make good choices. Don't do drugs. Don't hurt your brain cells. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this. Take care of yourselves. Stay sober. Have some great holidays. If you broke, get a job. Buy your mama something for Christmas. I'm out of here.